How do you see the synergy between AI and Web3? What are the main areas you actually see those synergies between the two techs?
There's a huge need for resource driven, where you can kind of subsidize cost using Web3. We've seen that happen with compute.
What is your perception on AI in general?
I think we should all embrace AI. A lot of people worrying about AI and getting scared of it. I think we should definitely embrace it. People are going to lose jobs, but it's fine. I think we will find more jobs to be created.
Ramkumar, the core contributor of OpenLedger.
The AI blockchain, unlocking liquidity to monetize data, models, and agents.
How would you describe OpenLedger to someone who isn't very knowledgeable on AI specifically?
OpenLedger provides you an infrastructure where you can bring in generic models and correct data sets around the model that you want it to be made for, train this model to that particular subject with the data that you collected, and then have them launched in our platform and then monetize them and then get rewarded.
What is there to look forward to mainly within the OpenLedger ecosystem outside of Mainnet?
Apart from that,
Welcome back to the Lock-In or Log-Off podcast, where I speak to builders, creators, and investors to understand how they spotted the opportunity and how they navigated their way to success. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of AI, both in Web 2 and Web 3, and understanding how OpenLedger are looking to revolutionize this side of things. Today, I'm joined by core contributor Ram from OpenLedger. How's it going, man?
I'm good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me here.
I'm good. The market is good. I cannot
Yes.
complain. Everything is green. I think it's getting a little bit euphoric out here.
Yes, ETH is finally back, and it's all good for the ETH holders who've been holding on to it. I don't know. The first time I bought ETH was 2017, so yeah, so it's been a good time to hold ETH.
Through the ups and downs of ETH. I think there was a period where everyone was second guessing, like, will it ever have its run this cycle?
Yeah,
And it's good to finally see it get that run, because I think everyone who was like, yeah, 2021, I came in 2021. ETH is still the baby of like what brought us so much enjoyment within this industry. So yeah, it's really nice to see. Yeah, nice to see it kind of getting its shine at least.
yeah, that's true. No, absolutely. I think that's good for the ecosystem, especially for us. Like since we're building on top of ETH, we are layer 2 on Ethereum. It's always good to have the community sentiment positive, the Ethereum ecosystem. I think that's where the most builders are, and has been our biggest attraction as well. We want to focus on a ecosystem which has a lot of builders, and so definitely we've all been ETH maxis, right? Probably our team when we started back in 2017 as a blockchain R&D company, I think we were one of the first few team actually to mint an ERC20 token on Ethereum, right?
Wow.
So it's like those are the days where everyone was launching an ICO, and and it's all about minting an ERC20 token and then coming up with some stories and they were launching. So we didn't do that, right? We didn't do an ICO. We were just focused majorly as a tech company, and but we minted a lot of tokens for other people. So yeah, so I do remember that.
Interesting. I think that segues very nicely. I like to dive into a little bit more about people's history before what they're doing right now and understanding really how they got to where they are now. Are you able to go a little bit more into kind of your journey up into where you are now?
Yeah, so as I told you, right, I got in the space in 2017. Got into it because someone paid us in Bitcoin. So with that, got to know about the industry. Thought this is a bit crazy thing to do, to decentralize money, and but also understood that there's more that can be done with this technology, and that's when Ethereum was like really popping, right? People are 2015, I think Ethereum did its ICO, and then 2017 is when they came up with the ERC20 token standard, and people are launching tokens with that. There are people who are forking Ethereum and building protocols around that and stuff. So we thought, why don't we build a tech team around this and also implement like machine learning services around this as well. Started working when we initially worked in the space, like not many enterprises were getting into Web3. It was people who were experimenting, but around the age of like 2020, 2021, a lot of enterprises got into Web3. And we had an opportunity to work with a lot of enterprises. This includes Walmart. We've worked with Cadbury's, Pepsi, LA Times, Viacom, and many more other enterprises. And we provided solutions for them, right? And we ramped up to like close to about 200 employees. We've worked with all of these guys. We were doing about $40 million in revenue. We were pretty stable. But one thing that we wanted to experiment and like build across is to build a product which is much more scalable, right? In the end, it was an R&D and a service company. We thought, okay, building a product is key if you want to scale and access to a larger group of audience. And that pushed us, and that's how we started working on OpenLedger as a protocol. We wanted to contribute to that. And the idea was to see how we can build a larger AI ecosystem, because when we were thinking about this, ChatGPT was just coming up, right? But what, like, really, as every technology has grown on to become, right? Everything starts with being general and then becomes specialized. ChatGPT was more generic. We thought it's like the Google search, but then there would be like other searches and other needs that will come in. So there will be a need for like a specialized model that will power these apps. And that's how OpenAI as a protocol was born, to build a protocol that can um, enable people to collect proprietary data and build like specialized models. And here we are. It's almost 2 years since we started contributing, and then it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, what a journey. Before we go into the open ledger specific side of things, you mentioned obviously you worked with a lot of the enterprises before. Obviously, 2021, the perception of Web3 was very, very different to, I guess, what it is now. Back then, they came in experimentation. A lot of them left shortly after. A lot of the people a lot of the enterprises that joined us sadly did end up leaving because they didn't see the validation maybe that they wanted to, or they just, fundamentally, a lot of the enterprises couldn't move quick enough in the new tech industry to be able to really capitalize on what was possible. How have you found the sentiment from enterprises specifically change from what, like, those negotiations and those partnerships you had in 2021 versus what you're currently doing at the moment?
So, 2021, Web3 was like AI, right? Everyone wanted to do it. Everyone wanted to experiment around that. This always happens with enterprises because, there is a team, there's an R&D budget, people want to experiment, they don't want to be left out. This kind of had become a habit for enterprises after the internet era happened, right? A lot of people got left out in the internet era. There were internet first companies that were born, which took over the brick and mortar and enterprise firms. So enterprise do not want to any kind of other like train that'll come out, right? So Web3 was very similar to that because everyone was getting into Web3 and it was a huge rage. So people were like experimenting around building around Web3. So it was much easier in 2021. But of course, after the FTX collapse and all that, with enterprises not even thinking about doing anything remotely related to Web3, it's been pretty hard. But one thing I've come to realize is that if you build a good product and if you're able to provide a solution which is what's needed for people, then Web3 or what, people will use you, right? And that we saw with OpenLedger. What we kind of figured out is that there are two parts to OpenLedger. One is we use attribution to figure out models, like how it works based on data, and we figure out which data is causing an impact in a model, and then we use that to reward people, right? But we also use attribution to show how a model works, basically on the auditable side of the model. Like, how can a model be opened? How can we kind of figure out which data is causing a model to behave in a certain way, and how that can like bring back traceability and stuff. Like, for example, if a model throws an output and an inference, we would be able to see which particular data set had the biggest impact, which had the least impact. So if something goes wrong, we'll be able to figure out what really went wrong, which data actually caused that, right? So that's very important for any kind of enterprise using that solution, because enterprises would need auditability. They can't just use ChatGPT because it's smarter. They need to know why it is giving it such an answer. So that kind of made us work with enterprises again. We got to work with Walmart again for OpenLedger. We got to work with Sony again. So the reason why we are working with these enterprises is because of the unique product use case that we figured out, right, where we explain models better using attribution. So yeah, it's a bit different. It's not as easier, but still there's a demand.
Yeah, no, I think it's a positive thing. I think in 2021 it was like too easy in many ways, and that's probably why it led to so many of them coming in the wrong way that didn't actually lead to something that was logical for their company and that actually had the right synergy. But you mentioned there that basically looking to build obviously specialized models, right? One, why do you think that is the way to go compared to the general ones? Obviously, we see generals doing very, very well across the market, open AIs, everything, Grok, everything like this. We obviously
Yeah.
are seeing more demand for specialized side of things. But yeah, why did you go down the specialized routes as that has been your conviction play for OpenLedger specifically?
Yeah, so we don't say that general models are not so useful. These specialized models are basically specialized versions of general models, right? Basically, general models are fine-tuned with more data sets to make them specialized. What we believe is a very logical or like proven out thing. If you take a look at it, right, when ChatGPT was launched, it was not so great with finance. And after about a year, like Bloomberg GPT was launched, which is much better in terms of managing finance compared to ChatGPT, right? Uh, and it's very natural because you can make a model understand certain things only so much. The knowledge can be like, let's say, like human, right? We all study under graduation. We have a general knowledge of the world, and then we specialize in a particular subject for us to be concise and be an expert in that field. Very similarly, in AI, um, it cannot pretty much understand everything that is there. It cannot be an expert in everything that is there, right? And then if you do that, you have a model which is like too big and it's not so useful. Also, it's going to hallucinate so much. So the idea is to have a generic model, which is like sort of like a Google search, like a generic search, and then build like specialized versions of these models for individual use cases. That's what we promote. That's what we enable. We let people collect data for a model that they want to build on a particular specialization. As they collect these data sets, they start to train these models with those data sets and make these models special, and then have them launched on top of us. So that if, let's say, someone wants to build an agent and they have just an API access to our protocol, they can call any model that they want to expert be the agent to be an expert in, and then start inferring to that model. And every time this model gets paid, we make sure that a portion of that revenue goes back to the data contributor. So they are part of that. They get rewarded if their data made impact. So the thesis is basically um, general models are good, but general models are not just enough. You need models to be much more expert and trained on a particular subject than just be like very highly, having a very high knowledge of certain things.
And are you guys going to be collecting the data yourself, or are you guys building the infrastructure specifically to allow companies to collect data from their users as such and build their own agents off the back of that? Like are you guys the infrastructure for it, or are you also working on the side of actually collecting data?
There are two parts to this. We don't collect data. We work with enterprises. We also work with the community, right? The community will be able to access our platform once we go mainnet, but we have a group of testnet builders building models on us. We have about 20 projects building AI models. They use OpenLedger to collect data. They use our infra to collect data. There are three major solutions that we provide. The first solution is called DataNet, where you as a model developer can choose what kind of data sets you want to collect, write a rule engine, and start to collect data sets on top of us. So it gets stored in the DataNet. And there is Model Factory, where you can choose any base model, any larger language model as a base model, which is open source, and then train that model with the data that you collected on the DataNet. Now, the data that you collected goes into this model, it gets trained onto the model. And then now you can launch this model on top of OpenLedger. The platform is called Open Models. Basically, you are deploying models at scale on top of this, and then have agents and apps access these models using APIs, right? Or you can chat with it like ChatGPT. Now, agents, apps, when they use these models, most of the time they pay for it, right? Because these are specialized models, there goes an effort goes in. So every time we receive a payment for that inference, paid using our open tokens, the revenue is then flown back to the model creator and the data contributor. So that's sort of like the cyclic economy that we are looking to create here. This is on the community side. On enterprises, they predominantly bring their own data, train the models with their own data. Since they own data, they don't have to they don't have to reward. They just use attribution to figure out how data is impacting models and then optimize their models, also have auditability of how these models work as well. So this is how enterprises and communities use OpenLedger to build models and then also manage how it works as well.
Interesting. How have you, probably a broader question around AI specifically, but how do you see these like niche data sets being, or smaller data sets, maybe more niche and more targeted data sets, be able to compare to build an AI agents or models as such compared to like these huge conglomerates that have just such huge data sets? I know they're more general, but is there not a
Yeah.
world where an OpenAI can at some point have also more niche products within that's built with more data, more data and more better data than kind of defeating all the ones that kind of are built from these more niche people?
You know, absolutely. I think OpenAI or any larger enterprise out there will get access to proprietary data. What we are trying to create over here is just a rather radical way of getting people access to data, right? There's any enterprise would not want to constantly pay data contributors. It's just a one-time buy because
Yep.
it's not feasible, right? And that's not their market. They're not into that. They're not into this data selling market. But we want to tap into a market where we find that there is a need for niche data set. There is a need among the data like model developers who are accessing these niche data set. On the end, these model developers are initial builders, not having much resources. They want to experiment, they want to innovate, right? They don't want to pay anything much upfront. So these are the two players that we want to tap in. People who have niche data, which is basically the knowledge or data set they own, and model developers who want to experiment and build AI models which are unique. They get to access this data on top of OpenLedger at no cost. They build models on top of us. And if it makes revenue, it becomes sustainable, then they reward the data contributors. And then data contributors, realizing that the data was the biggest impact and the quality of data made them earn more, they try to contribute more on a sustainable manner. They keep on contributing so that the model gets better and they get rewarded. So it's sort of like this YouTube moment that you're trying to create, right? Where you can upload videos to YouTube and then you get paid. If the quality of your video is good, you get more views, you get paid more. So very similarly, we want to do that for data among AI, around the AI space. There's a huge demand for like these data sets, right? If you take a look at Hugging Face, about 90% of Hugging Face data sets are useless.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because it's not monetized, it's open source. People don't really put in that effort. Um, what if we can monetize that? If we just simply switch on that particular toggle, and there's a lot more demand that can be taken care of. Still, even though like OpenAI, Meta has like invested like about $14 billion in scale, all of that is happening, they will get access to proprietary data, but still there'll be more people who want to monetize data better, monetize data more, want to get rewarded constantly. So that's the market that we're tapping into. I think there is a lot of there's so much pie to have for everyone. So I think you're going for a very niche subject, and we've already seen traction. People are needing this. You're just figuring out ways to scale that as well.
And obviously, with that model, it heavily relies on the incentive being large enough for people to provide data on both sides. It's kind of like it has to weigh out where people will give enough data to make the data sources rich enough for the companies that want to build them. How are you guys tackling the side of like making the incentive high enough? So obviously, with the YouTube side of things, they obviously post YouTube and they get ad revenue as such, and that is large enough now where it makes a huge it's large enough to make people want to do it because of the incentive is high enough. How do you guys see that incentive alignment to make sure you get enough data within your ecosystem?
Yeah, I think everything starts very similar, right? You need to have the initial early adopters, and then you start to get the flywheel. Uh, in our case also, I think we've seen initial early adopters who started using us, data contributors who come forward and contributed data. Once we get the flywheel, I think that's when it kicks in, and we would still see large chunks of like revenue coming in. We've already seen like early signs of that. There is demand for this. People want these kind of data set, and there are a lot of people who actually have knowledge to this who want to contribute and monetize as well. So it's all about bringing people together and making sure this happen, right? If you can figure out a product that can make things easier, make things open, and make things accessible, this would happen automatically, right? Hugging Face had this problem because they can't monetize. And the reason they can't monetize is because, they're a very traditional platform. They can't reward people using traditional rails. We use crypto as a way to reward. So what we really have now opening up is access to knowledge across the globe, right? And access to niche knowledges across the globe, which is much, much more highly valuable than any kind of platform that just has a data as a marketplace where you can go and buy it, right? For example, I'll give you an idea, right? We launched a language-based testnet where we collected language data set. We're able to collect language data for Korea, I think Chinese, and also Spanish in about 2 weeks' time. I think close to about 4 to 5 terabytes of data sets. And then Hugging Face almost took 6 months, and they could complete only about 40% of that, right? Because they could not get distributors and contributors across the globe to come forward and contribute the data and get paid for it. And the only reason was because they could not reward anyone. Once we started incentivizing, once we started just giving out rewards to people who can contribute, people who have like language knowledge is among common people, right? I could go and answer any kind of question in my native language, just whether it's right or wrong, and write some essays, right? So it is so easy to collect the data because you could monetize. So it all comes down to what kind of area you're targeting, and what is what kind of people are you connecting with who are using this product. So if your product is unique, it solves a problem, it'll pick up and it'll start bringing that flywheel. Um, there is a huge need for a product like this. We've spoken with almost, I think, 20 different AI companies who are building in this space when we initially started. Everyone had this problem of data. Everyone had this problem of getting access to like proprietary data, but also like unbiased and data which is at the world scale, right? And that's why we started building this. Um, I'm sure this will work out, but at what scale and how we will be able to pull it off is the challenge. But this idea, even if we don't do it, someone else would have done it, and they would just scale this. So it all comes down to how we scale it and how we get to attract right people to build on us.
Interesting. So it's fundamentally your guys' biggest edge is the fact that you're using Web3 as a mode to distribute incentives as such, and that allows you for high quality data and therefore more customers as such.
Yeah, that's the biggest motive. Apart from that, it's verifiable. You can see on chain. You will own your data. You can see that on chain. You will also be able to access why you're getting paid to this for this data. That's on an immutable record. You can see that as well. So that brings in trust. We want to build trust on the code, not on the team. So that's very important for people across the globe to participate. Knowing that they're going to get paid because they can see it on the blockchain is important. So all of that plays together very well.
Interesting. And broadly speaking, outside of Open Ledger, obviously you guys are using blockchain tech to distribute rewards. How do you see the synergy between AI and Web3? Obviously, we saw a huge boom end of last year, like around AI and Web3, but fundamentally, it was a lot of it was like what could drive the most attention. It was cool, but there wasn't like anything groundbreaking. What are the main areas you actually see those synergies between the two techs?
Yeah, we see huge. I think there's a huge need for like resource driven, like where you can kind of like subsidize cost using Web3. We've seen that happen with compute, right? A lot of decentralized AI company actually solve problems, even for us, right? When we were initially trying out before our raise, we used to use GPUs, and like our AWS bill used to be like $7 per hour for a GPU, right? And it just didn't make sense because we are a startup, and then we use Ether, it's like $1 per hour for us. So it is much more comprehensive in terms of using it, right? So Web3 can definitely solve that problem of subsidizing and bringing resources together. Agents was a huge hit, but it went down, spiraled down because there's no value being created. As long as you make value, as long as the speculation can only stay strong for maybe a month or two. More than that, it will not, right? It'll be good for a hype, but it's not going to sustain. That's what we understood as well. If as long as you actually build a product that is useful, a product that will be used by people, then you will sustain the hype and then you will make an impact. I think that way of AI projects are just coming out. Most of them we're building in the last 2 years, and we're going mainnet. A lot of builders who are building the AI space in the Web3 are very good friends. I think there will be a huge impact that will be created in the coming months or years as well. So let's hope for the best, because I think it's there's a lot of people trying to solve very niche problems in AI space using Web3, which are getting rolled out. So now I think now is the time to judge. I don't think we should not be prejudiced already.
Yeah, I mean, we see it a lot, right? We see we always see the first wave of interesting tech intersections go crazy because they're exciting, but fundamentally it's like very vaporware. It kind of shows initial PMF and initial interest, and then like the real devs and the real builders are like, oh, like there's something here, and they end up like starting to build the product then, but that takes like many months or many years in some cases, and only then do you see the real wave of real products come out. So I'm optimistic similarly that like we'll start to see more real products come out with that intersection between the two techs, and I'm interested to see how people pull that off.
Yeah, I think we should be. We were optimistic about ETH, so now see where
Yeah.
ETH is.
That
So
played
yeah,
out all right. Yeah.
yeah.
How are you? What is your perception on AI in general? Are you obviously you work for an AI company, so I assume you have to kind of sit on you're an optimist on that side. But there's obviously a lot of discussion, more broadly speaking, like more philosophically, around AI and how it's going to impact people's lives. What is your take on it all?
I think we should all embrace AI. A lot of people worrying about AI and getting scared of it. I think we should definitely embrace it. I'm sure that it's going to lose, people are going to lose jobs, but it's fine. I think we will find more jobs to be created. This happened on the internet era. This happened during the PC era. This happened when industrial revolution was happening. A lot of people lose jobs whenever there's a revolution that happens, right? But that also created a lot of jobs. That also improved humanity much, much more bigger than what it was before that. Right? It just connects people to better. It just provides better solutions to things that we want to build in. Makes things much more faster. So I don't think we need to like really worry about AI. They just need to learn more about it, get aware of it, and embrace it. And whatever it is, like I think AI is really going to take into every part of our life. It's going to create a big impact. We should make sure that we are having the right knowledge about it. One thing that is important is that more than any kind of research or anything like that, AI will start to make impact in common man's life, right? Everyday life. Like how, let's say, a messenger like WhatsApp is one of the most used application out there. It impacts people's life, it impacts businesses, it connects people together, it makes long distance relationships stand strong and stuff. So AI will be that, right? It will actually bring an impact into common people life. So it's going to be like a public good. When it's going to be like a public good, people have to be responsible about it. People have to build these systems in a way that it is beneficial for the larger human need. That means that you need to build in systems which are open, which are verifiable, which are by nature decentralized. There could be certain parts that are centralized, but wherever there could be decentralization is, I think, is very much needed. We've seen that with the finance system. I think decentralized finance was one of the biggest revolutions in human history. If we could bring in decentralized intelligence, I think that creates a big impact. That's what I think. I think intelligence is a public good, and it has to be decentralized as much as possible.
What is your view on some of these giants not being open source as such? Like, do you see that as a big scare, or do you see that as something? Yeah, because that's like the biggest fear, right? I think fundamentally the biggest fear is really powerful AI getting into the wrong hands, and basically, if we do not have that open source and people do not understand the power behind it or how to control it, what is your view fundamentally on some of the bigger boys not being open source?
Yeah, typically any larger technology has either been controlled or regulated by the government, or it has been open source, right? AI, certain parts of people have been open source. Certain companies have claimed to be open source. They're not actually open source, right? Um, it comes down to regulations. It also comes down to motive of people, what they're looking to achieve. It's I see, in a point of it. At one point, if you take a look at it, there are a lot of investors who are in this space who are investing into AI. The motive of investors or all the project is to actually make money out of it. Everyone wants to make something as a public good, but they want to make some money out of it. And if you open source it, there's no way you can make a hard baked business model, right? The business model has to be twisted a bit different. Um, it could not be open source, but it can be still responsible. It can still be regulated. It can still be open in terms of visibility, right? It does come down to that. It's about the motivation of the company, motivation of the founder who's building it. If they have the right motivations, it'll be open. It also comes down to the consumers, right? I think we have the power right now. Our previous generation chose convenience over privacy, right? And most of our internet usage has been like that, right? We did not really care about privacy. But the current generation is much more knowledgeable. They grew up in the internet era, so they kind of value privacy more than actual convenience. And it is because of education, it is what they learned and stuff like that. So they want to be more democratic. They want the internet to be more democratic, right? So if they can go ahead and create that impact and choose to acknowledge and use products which are open, which are verifiable, they embrace that, then that would start to see an impact, right? Yeah, ChatGPT is pretty strong and better compared to any other open source, let's say, than Mistral, but if you are choosing convenience and choose to decide to use ChatGPT always, then you're encouraging a behavior which is supposed to not be done, right? If we could change that ideology, then I think we would see a change. So it comes down to the people that use it. It's not, we would always think it's the team and the founders, which is a bit like maybe like 20-30%, but it comes down to the people who actually, the consumers who use it and what they demand for.
So do you think in the case like OpenAI specifically, it's more the consumers and them using it that has kind of allowed them to stay not open source as such? Yeah, do you think it's more on the consumer side? Because fundamentally, because it's so much better, or it's naturally is better in many cases, people use it anyway, even knowing that
Yeah.
it's not fully open source. So you're saying a more consumer side?
It's definitely more the consumer side. Like, in even though we knew that Facebook is taking most of our data, we actually
Yeah.
decided to use Facebook. It's just because of the features and because all our friends were there, right? I think it just definitely comes down to the consumers. If what they embrace and what they impact, what they choose to do, it'll happen. Think of it to be on sort of like the positive side, right? Consumers started using Netflix. That's why piracy was almost dead. Because of that, every before that, every other movie was got into piracy, and then like there was so much movies that were like available in pirated sites. But after Netflix, like the switch kind of flipped over, right? And it's because the consumers actually decided to pay for movies and watch movies at their home. What if you could do that for AI as well? Consumers decide to use open source. Consumers decide to that they want to be using things which are verifiable. It comes down to them. So yeah. So I don't use ChatGPT. I use only open source product. I'm as productive as my other counterparts who use ChatGPT. So there might be some compromises I do, but it's fine. That's the path I've chosen, right? So I think it comes down to the people.
Do you think, but like in the case of like Netflix and the pirating, it's because like Netflix made the friction so much lower. Like they made a better product, right? Do you
Yeah,
think it then requires an AI to be a lot better to then overturn that?
agree.
But
I
but
agree.
can they? Because like it's a data game and OpenAI are so far ahead. Obviously, there's competitors in it. There are other people who are close to it, but like, does it need someone to become better to then
Yeah.
overflip them?
Yeah, I think it comes down to people also putting in effort and also the product. Netflix was not really a great product from day one. People started using it and then it became a great product, right? So it always comes down to people. If you embrace it, you encourage the behavior, more of that will happen and more of that will become much more larger to use, right? So I think it's a two-way street. People have to embrace it, and then companies will understand that you're embracing them. People are being used. They'll be able to build better products.
Yeah. Well, I hopefully see that more and more. So it doesn't go on
Yeah,
too long. I think there's a level of concern on the OpenAI side. But going into the Open Ledger world specifically, but going to Open Ledger, obviously not everyone's directly very AI savvy as such. So they won't understand SLMs, LLMs, everything like that. How would you describe OpenLedger to someone who isn't very knowledgeable on AI specifically?
Yeah, so I would describe kind of like AI to be like human, right? Like, for example, let's say the human body to be like an agent, and it is designed to do what the brain does, which is sort of like the model. The knowledge base or model is like, I mean, the knowledge base of the brain is like a model, right? And how humans we are, like, we kind of like have a generic knowledge of the world. We initially get to be trained to have like a generic understanding of the world. We get to know about the world around pretty much every other topic, and then we specialize ourselves in a particular subject, right, that we want to become an expert in. That's how, AI is kind of evolving. AI is initially generic, and it will continue to be more and more better at being generic. But then an AI which is generic cannot be used as it is. You can't use a generic model for the healthcare industry. It needs to understand more about medicine. It needs to understand more about that particular field. AI cannot be used for legal as it is. You need to build a model that is trained for that. Like how humans are, like I can't just come out of undergraduate and become a lawyer. I need to become an expert in that. Very similarly, AI has to be trained in a particular sector to become an expert in that, and that's what we enable. OpenLedger provides you an infrastructure where you can bring in generic models, add correct data sets around the model that you want it to be made for, train this model to that particular subject with the data that you collected, and then have them launched in our platform, and then monetize them, and then get rewarded. So that's, in a way to say what we do. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think that simplifies it a lot for people. Obviously, you guys have been, everyone currently, I feel like, has gotten to know you as you kind of head up to Mainnet. And there's been a lot of excitement around what you guys are doing. But I guess the biggest challenge a lot of companies face is a lot of excitement up to Mainnet, but then how do you then maintain it post
Get it?
Mainnet?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that look like for you guys?
I think it comes down to what's your intention. A lot of people in crypto have just an intention to launch a token and not too much out of it. I think we want to think a bit different because by nature we have a DNA that we've made revenue, we've made build a sustainable company, and then we want to do that for open ledger as well, right? We want to build a protocol that is sustainable, and it's possible to do something like this. We don't have to be a ghost chain. There is a possibility for this to create a real world impact. There is a need for people to build models. There is a need for people to collect data sets. We've already seen that happen. We have more than 20 projects building on us right now. We work with more than like 7 enterprises who are already paying us. We're making revenue with these enterprises. So building a business model that is sustainable is possible, and that's what we're working towards. It comes down to people using it, giving feedback, whether they are able to relate to the product, whether we are able to actually create an impact to the end developer. If we can do that, then yes, I think we can build a sustainable protocol. And it's a learning. We will launch in mainnet. Not everything is going to be perfect. We will learn a lot of things. We will change a lot of things. As long as we are interested to do that, as long as we put effort into that, I think we'll be able to build a decent company.
What is it like building in like an industry where there's no clear playbook, especially when it comes to tokens? I think there's been very few where we've seen be sustainable, and I mean that obviously drives a lot of uncertainty for a lot of new projects and a lot of pressure to experiment. But obviously, there's a high risk with that. How have you found that
Yeah.
going for you guys specifically?
It's very intense, right? I just told you um, because like almost every other day there's a company going IPO right over here, which doesn't happen in the real world. You have like at a time you have like 20 different people looking to launch at the same time that you're doing. So it's pretty intense. It's pretty difficult, but I think we've been in the space so long that we kind of used to it. Um, but if you have a long-term goal and you build a product that is useful, product that provides value, I think people understand. It's a lot of people think retail do not understand what people are building. They don't really care about it and stuff. I don't think so. Like retail people are knowledgeable. I think they know what's really works and they know which one to bid for. And we've seen that happen almost every other time. The only projects that kind of sustained over any bear and bull market are the ones who actually had some kind of value. except few major ones who initially launched, like who really don't know what they do. Uh, but yeah, but other than them, most of them who are actually sustaining are ones who are having impact. So if we can create an impact, add value, people will be behind you forever. Yeah.
And obviously we're in the, I think that's a very nice way to approach it, but obviously we're in the meta of like, I mean, it's a great meta, but it's where like actual profitable companies that drive revenue are now seeing the day of light, where like they're getting the spotlight, right? And that's where we've seen the tokens do the best, because it drives a lot of value back to it. How do you guys see that side of things? What's the drive back to the value to the token within your ecosystem?
I think first of all, people should not say that as a meta as well, because that's how we should be as
It
a
should
company. It's
be.
not.
That should just be
It's not a meta.
fundamentally.
This meta
Yeah.
should not be changing, right? People,
Yeah.
so people have to build companies which are sustainable, which actually make revenue and become profitable. So that's what I would think. That's how real entrepreneurs think. They want to build a business which is sustainable, and we want to do that. Only if you build a business that is sustainable, then actually your token has a value, because token is just an economic value of your company. If you build a business which has value, then your token will have a accruing growth value, right? So, and that's important. So that's what we want to focus on. We want to make sure that we can create this cyclic economy. There's always demand for a token only if your product is useful, only if your product is useful, only if it has a business model. And we're working towards that. I think we do have a business model. There is a need for this. As long as we can sustain it, AI is always changing. There are a lot of things that will change. As long as we can adapt, and as long as we can be nimble, I think we'll be able to build a good protocol.
Exciting. I'm very excited for what you guys are building, and I think your approach is, yeah, it's refreshing. It's very, very much focused on the fundamentals, and I think we're starting to see a lot more companies go that way. But it's a nice way, even though you see the euphoria in the market. It's good to still see a lot of companies that have the right intentions to build something sustainable in this market. But as we kind of come towards the end, just one final question, and that's, what is there to look forward to mainly within the OpenLedger ecosystem outside of mainnet specifically?
We are going mainnet, that's definitely for sure. Apart from that, there will be a lot of projects we'll be launching on top of us. We'll go mainnet as well. We'll be announcing about them. Love to have our community and the ecosystem to look at them, encourage them, and then provide feedback. Um, there are a lot of more exciting stuff that will be announced. So would love to get people's support, the partnerships that you're working with, various other ecosystem partners. All of that will be launched as well. And apart from that, overall AI is changing our lives. I think, as I told before, we need to be aware of it. We should take it responsible. We need to embrace it, learn more about AI, try to see how we can use it for our best. And if we do that, I think we'll become much more knowledgeable. And then protocols like us, you don't have to educate people much. They will get to know more about us and reach out to us. So that's what I would wish people for.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's super exciting. And I'm really excited for what you guys have to come. Hopefully mainnet, all the hard work pays off for you guys. I'm sure it will. We're in a great market right now, and I've seen all the effort that you guys have put across the timeline. And I really like the approach that you guys have fundamentally gone for, with both the company, but also your go-to-market. So wishing you the best of luck, and thank you very much for taking the time to come on. Anyone who's interested, definitely go check their Twitter, and deep dive further into it. And yeah, best of luck for everything that you have to come around.
Thank you, Caleb. It was nice talking to you. I really enjoyed the show.
Likewise. Amazing.